Welcome to our deep dive. We're tackling The Art of Happiness today by the Dalai Lama and Howard C. Cutler.
Such a classic.
Yeah, and it's amazing how this book blends Buddhist philosophy with Western psychology.
Right. I mean,
That
you think about it and they seem so different.
totally, but they come together to explore this idea of achieving happiness, not just, happiness as this fleeting thing,
Right.
but as an inner state, like something more resilient.
Exactly. And that's what's so cool about this book. It's not about fleeting moments of joy. It's about how do we cultivate this lasting sense of inner peace and resilience, something that kind of sticks with you no matter what's happening around you.
I think that's what intrigued me the most going into this book. It's is happiness a skill? Is it something we can actually develop rather than something we're just, kind of chasing after?
You hit the nail on the head. The book really emphasizes that happiness isn't something you just stumble upon, right?
Yeah.
It's something we cultivate through practice, through mental discipline.
That makes me think about those stories of Tibetan monks who, even while in prison, they maintained this incredible peace and optimism.
That's amazing.
I remember reading about one technique they use called lojong. I don't know if you've heard of
I
that.
don't. Yeah, it's fascinating. It basically involves transforming negative thoughts into positive ones. So, instead of dwelling on resentment, toward their captors, they practice wishing them well.
Wow. That's such a radical shift in perspective, especially when you're in such difficult situations. So they're not ignoring the reality of their situation.
Yeah.
They're just choosing to focus on a different aspect of it.
Exactly. It's the book emphasizes we actually have a lot more control over our experience of the world than we often realize.
Right.
It's not about pretending everything is perfect, but choosing where we direct our attention and our energy.
It's almost like we're talking about building mental muscles, right?
Oh.
The more we practice these techniques, lojong or mindfulness, the stronger our minds become.
That's a great analogy. And just physical exercise has benefits beyond just, looking good.
Mm-hmm.
Mental training leads to resilience,
Yeah.
Better relationships, a deeper sense of purpose.
Right.
It's not just about feeling good. It's about being able to navigate all those ups and downs of life
Yeah.
with maybe more grace and ease.
Yeah. I'm already starting to think about how I approach challenges in my own life.
Sure.
But before we get too far ahead, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier about compassion.
Mm-hmm.
The Dalai Lama seems to place a lot of emphasis on this idea that genuine happiness actually arises from caring for others.
It's such a core principle in the book.
Mm.
And it makes sense. The book argues that genuine happiness, that lasting happiness, it comes from reducing feelings of isolation and fostering a sense of connection with others.
Yeah.
Recognizing that shared humanity and extending kindness, both to ourselves and to others.
So it's not about just meditating in a cave somewhere and trying to achieve this solitary bliss.
Right. Not at all. The book's full of anecdotes of the Dalai Lama, demonstrating kindness across cultural differences.
Yeah.
It really highlights how compassion is this universal language that transcends borders and, specific beliefs. It's about making a conscious effort to connect with others and to contribute to something larger than ourselves.
That's a beautiful idea. But I think it's also important to acknowledge that life isn't always, sunshine and rainbows. Suffering is a part of the human experience. Does the book address that?
Oh, absolutely. The Dalai Lama acknowledges that suffering is inevitable, but he offers a really unique perspective. He sees suffering as a teacher, as an opportunity for growth.
Wait, hold on. He's saying we should embrace suffering. That seems a bit extreme.
It's not about seeking out suffering, right? It's more about changing how we view it.
Yeah.
He uses his own experience of exile from Tibet as a powerful example.
Yeah.
Instead of being consumed by bitterness, he actually used this hardship to promote peace and understanding.
So it's about reframing the experience, finding meaning in our struggles. Instead of asking, why me, we ask, what can I learn from this?
Exactly. The Dalai Lama really encourages us to view challenges within the bigger picture of life. And he shares stories of people who found contentment despite facing immense hardship, simply by focusing on gratitude and purpose. Remember that story about the woman who lost her family in a natural disaster?
Right.
And she channeled her grief into building a school for children in her village.
Yeah, she took something incredibly painful and turned it into something positive. That's such a powerful example of reframing suffering.
The book is filled with examples like that. It's about recognizing that even amidst difficulty, there's always something to be thankful for. And that shift in perspective, it can transform those negative emotions into opportunities for learning and growth.
This is making me think about how I respond to challenges in my own life. Maybe instead of getting caught up in the initial frustration, I could ask myself, what's the lesson here? Or how can I turn this into something positive? It's like a totally different way of looking at things.
And that's exactly what The Art of Happiness aims to do, to provide you with a new lens through which to view life's challenges and opportunities.
Mm.
It's about recognizing that you have the power to shape your experience,
Right.
regardless of your circumstances.
This has been so insightful already. We've covered a lot of ground from, reframing suffering to the power of compassion. But I feel like we're just scratching the surface. What other gems does this book hold? I'm really curious about like the practical side of all of this.
Right.
It's one thing to talk about these concepts,
Yeah.
but how do we actually apply them, in our daily lives? I'm
Yeah.
especially interested in that idea of like training our minds for happiness. Where do we even begin?
Well, the book actually delves into some specific techniques we can use.
Okay.
And one of those powerful ones is mindfulness. You've probably heard of that.
Yeah.
But it's about becoming aware of our thoughts and feelings without judgment. Just kind of observing them as they come up,
Right.
as they arise.
It's like hitting the pause button on that constant stream of thoughts that's always like running through our heads, right? But how do we actually do that? Like it seems like our minds are just wired to jump from one thing to the next without even realizing it.
It's true, but mindfulness is a skill that we can develop with practice.
Okay.
You can think of it like watching clouds drift by, right? You don't try to control them, you just acknowledge their presence.
Mm.
The book offers some really practical tips. Like one of them is focusing on our breath. Just paying attention to the sensation of each inhale and each exhale can really anchor us in the present moment.
That sounds so simple, but I have a feeling it's harder than it seems. What about those times when like our minds are just racing with worries or anxieties? Does mindfulness help with that too?
Absolutely. The book explains that while it's natural to experience difficult emotions like anxiety,
Right.
it's our response to them that really determines their impact. Mindfulness allows us to create space between ourselves and those emotions so we can choose how we want to respond instead of just reacting automatically.
So it's not about like suppressing those feelings or pretending they don't exist,
Right.
but about learning to observe them without getting like swept away by them.
Exactly. And the book even offers some helpful strategies for dealing with specific emotions like anger. For example, one suggestion is to consider the other person's perspective. Often when we understand where someone else is coming from, our anger dissipates.
Oh, I can see how that would be helpful. It's like taking a step back and realizing that the other person might be acting out of their own pain or fear
Right.
rather than intentionally trying to hurt us.
Right. It's about shifting our perspective. And sometimes simply expressing our anger in a healthy way
Right.
can really release its hold on us. The book talks about the importance of finding healthy outlets for our emotions, whether it's journaling, talking to a trusted friend,
Right.
or even going for a run to blow off some steam.
It's like we're given a whole new set of tools to navigate the ups and downs of life instead of just reacting on autopilot. But what about the compassion piece?
Yes.
We talked earlier about how the Dalai Lama emphasizes that genuine happiness comes from caring for others. How do we actually cultivate that?
Well, the book beautifully defines compassion as the wish for another being to be free from suffering. It's about recognizing our shared humanity and extending kindness to ourselves and to others.
That's a beautiful definition, but how do we move beyond just feeling compassion to actually like acting on it? I know sometimes I feel overwhelmed by the amount of suffering in the world, and I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah, I get that. And one of the most powerful things we can do is start small. The book suggests engaging in random acts of kindness. It could be as simple as holding the door for someone,
Right.
offering a genuine compliment,
Mhm.
or donating to a cause we care about.
It's like those little acts of kindness can really make a difference.
They can.
It's like sprinkling seeds of positivity wherever we go.
Exactly. And the beauty of it is that these small acts not only benefit others, but they also have this positive impact on our own well-being. Studies have actually shown that helping others releases endorphins, boosts our mood, even strengthens our immune system.
So it's a win-win situation. The more kindness we give, the more happiness we experience.
It really is. The book emphasizes that compassion is not a weakness,
Right.
but a source of strength.
Yeah.
It connects us to others,
Yeah.
reduces those feelings of isolation,
Yeah.
and creates this ripple effect of positivity.
It's like a muscle that gets stronger the more we use it.
Exactly.
But let's be real for a second. It's so easy to get caught up in the hustle and bustle of daily life and forget about all of this wisdom. How do we make these practices stick?
Yeah.
How do we actually integrate them into our busy lives?
That's a great question, and it's something the book addresses directly. One of the key takeaways is that lasting change comes from incorporating these principles into our daily routines,
Okay.
even if it's just for a few minutes each day.
So it's about creating habits like brushing our teeth or
Yeah.
taking a shower.
Exactly. Just as we wouldn't expect to see results from exercising only once a month,
Right.
we can't expect to transform our minds without regular practice.
It's like we're training our minds for a marathon of happiness, not a sprint.
I like that.
But how do we stay motivated?
Yeah.
It's easy to get discouraged when we don't see results immediately.
Sure. And the book encourages us to be patient with ourselves
Okay.
and to celebrate our small victories along the way. It's about recognizing that change takes time and effort,
Right.
but the rewards are well worth it.
I'm starting to see how all of these pieces fit together. Mindfulness, compassion, resilience. They all kind of contribute to this larger picture of cultivating lasting happiness.
And the journey begins with a single step.
Hmm.
The book reminds us that even small changes can have a profound impact over time.
I love that. It feels empowering to know that we have the power to shape our own happiness, regardless of our circumstances. It's not about waiting for something outside of ourselves to change, but about taking responsibility for our own inner state.
Absolutely.
This conversation has been so incredibly eye-opening. It feels like we've uncovered a whole new way of thinking about happiness. But I'm also wondering about the specifics. What are some concrete actions people can take to start applying these principles in their own lives?
Yeah, it feels like we've been handed this toolbox filled with amazing tools,
Right.
but now we need to figure out how to use them.
Yeah.
What are some specific things listeners can start doing today
Mm-hmm.
to put these principles into practice?
Well, you don't need to overhaul your entire life. One of the simplest yet most powerful practices is cultivating daily mindfulness. We
Oh.
touched on it before, but it's worth emphasizing.
Right. It's about being present in the moment without judgment. Kind of like noticing your breath or the sensations in your body.
Yeah.
Exactly. Even a few minutes of this each day can have a huge impact on your sense of well-being. It can help reduce stress, improve your focus, and even make you more aware of your thoughts and feelings.
It's like hitting a mental reset button for a few minutes. That's a pretty appealing idea in our busy world.
It is. Another really powerful tool is gratitude journaling. Taking a few moments each day to write down things you're grateful for can shift your focus from what you lack to what you already have.
So it's like actively training your brain to see the good stuff.
Yes, and it doesn't have to be anything huge or dramatic. You can be grateful for a delicious meal, a sunny day, a kind word from a friend, all those little things we often take for granted.
Yeah, I think it's easy to get caught up in focusing on what's going wrong or what's missing,
Yeah.
and we forget to appreciate those simple joys.
Gratitude journaling helps us savor those moments and recognize the abundance in our lives.
Okay, so we've got mindfulness and gratitude journaling. What else can we do to make this art of happiness a reality in our lives?
Well, remember how we talked about the Dalai Lama emphasizing compassion? We can actually practice this by engaging in random acts of kindness.
Oh, yeah, it's like a little spark of good you put out into the world, even if it's just holding a door or offering a sincere compliment to someone.
Exactly, and those small gestures don't just brighten someone else's day, they have a positive impact on us too. There's actually research that shows helping others releases endorphins and can even boost your immune system.
So that's a win-win. We feel good and make a positive impact. That's pretty motivating. And what about those inevitable challenges we all face? How do we develop that resilience the Dalai Lama talks about?
The book encourages us to practice patience, acceptance, and self-compassion when things get tough. It's not about denying difficult emotions, but about learning to navigate them with more grace and understanding.
So it's almost like building up that inner strength so we can weather the storms life throws at us.
It is. Resilience isn't about avoiding challenges altogether. It's about having the tools and mindset to bounce back from them stronger.
I have to say, this whole deep dive has been incredibly insightful. We've been given so much practical advice and food for thought. It's a bit overwhelming in a good way.
And remember, the journey to happiness is ongoing. It's not about reaching some perfect state and staying there forever. It's about continuously practicing these principles, even when you stumble or face setbacks.
It's like any skill, really. It takes time, effort, and a willingness to learn and grow.
You got it. And the wisdom of this book can serve as a guide along the way.
So for our listeners who are feeling inspired, what's one small step they can take today to start putting this into practice?
I'd encourage everyone to pick just one of the practices we've discussed today and commit to doing it for a week. 5 minutes of mindfulness, jotting down 3 things you're grateful for, performing one random act of kindness, any of those can make a difference.
That's a great challenge. Start small, be consistent, and see what happens. You might surprise yourself.
It's been such a pleasure diving into the art of happiness with you. I hope our listeners feel empowered to take these insights and create more joy and meaning in their own lives.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. And until next time, keep seeking, keep learning, and keep diving deep into the wonders of knowledge.